Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Texas City COVID-19 1 year later and Path Be Ahead panel Q&A session. Stay tuned. Presentation will begin momentarily. Live stream. We're testing our audio. We should be streaming shortly. Thank you for your patience. We're looking forward to your participation and presentation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those in attendance here tonight at the Doyle Convention Center and those that are joining us online, we appreciate each and every one of you being here. Before we get started this evening, I want to let those know that are here in attendance over to your left, right outside this door, we have hot dogs and we have water for your enjoyment. You're welcome to grab a bite to eat while this event is going on this evening. You can bring it back in here with you. We're going to get started in just a few moments. The mayor will be here shortly. Again, thank you for being here. degree in journalism from the University of Texas at Austin. Nothing? Hey. For the first 15 years of his professional career, he worked as an educator for the Texas City Independent School District. While there, he served as coach, mentor, and club sponsor. He went back to college or went back to school at College of the Mainland and received his associate's degree in applied science and process technology. Prior to being elected to mayor this past November, he was initially elected to the Texas City Commission in 2000. In the year 2000, he served under two previous mayors where he honed or refined his public service skills and served as a commissioner for a total of 16 consecutive years, stepping away from the political office in 2016. He is an associate minister at the Greater St. Matthew's Church and works at Marathon Petroleum as a process operator.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Branson, for that introduction. I appreciate that. I wasn't expecting that, but I certainly appreciate that. To the ladies and gentlemen who are here, we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and partake in this event with us, the pandemic, COVID-19, 1 year later, and the path ahead. To those of you who are tuning in online, we thank you for taking time out of your schedule, whether you be on social media or the website or the radio. We want to thank you. This is a very important event, we feel, as we continue to navigate the challenges of the pandemic. We feel that we need to do so with a sense of direction and a sense of knowledge of not only where we've been, but where we're going. One of the first things we need to understand about this pandemic is that it is real, it is present, and it is still here. Before I begin too far, I want to thank, once again, Mr. Branson for the introduction. I also want to introduce our commissioner who is here with us today, Commissioner Dorothea Pointer. I see her in the audience, and I do believe I saw Commissioner Henry earlier, but I'm not sure who he is, but all the commissioners have been working hard with the City of Texas City staff to make sure that our citizens are informed and that our staff is healthy as we proceed throughout the pandemic. One of the ways to fight this pandemic, and we've all approached it from different ways and heard many different reports from many different experts, but one of the ways to fight this pandemic is to simply know your status, to know whether or not you're clear of the virus or you have the virus. And in doing so, we have embarked upon testing around the city, and we've had over 24 different testing opportunities in the city of Texas City. We've tested at the Galveston County Health District. We've tested at Carver Park. We've tested at some local churches. We've tested at right here at the Doyle Convention Center. And those tests will continue because it is important to know your status. After testing comes the vaccines, and we know that the rollout of the vaccines initially was a little slow, and they came in a priority of tiers and healthcare professionals and those who are 65 and older or those with some pre-existing vulnerable conditions. We addressed all of those, and we at the City of Texas City joined forces with our Galveston County Health District and offered testing vaccination sites at Carver Park as well as right here at the Doyle Center. We offered ourselves as hubs for this vaccination, and in both different of those opportunities, we vaccinated over 800 people each time. And we partook of the vaccination of Moderna. We heard about Moderna and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. Those first two, Moderna and Pfizer, were the two-dose vaccination methods. And just recently, we had the vaccination where we vaccinated 820 people, and about 700 of those were receiving the vaccination for the second time, and the other 100 were first-time doses. So we were hit by this pandemic just like everyone else in the world. Schools were temporarily shut down, and some businesses closed for short term. And some businesses actually closed their doors for good. But believe it or not, some businesses actually thrived during the pandemic. And there were some businesses that were actually created during the pandemic. So today, what we're going to hear from is my esteemed panel of guests to my left and your right. We're going to hear from a business perspective our Texas City Lamarck Chamber of Commerce president, Ms. Paige Michelle. We'll hear from our superintendent of Texas City Independent School District, Dr. Melissa Duarte, and we will hear from our very own Galveston County health expert, Dr. Kaiser. As we hear from these people, we want to take thought as to how each one of what they have to say applies to our lives. But not only have the churches been affected, not only have the schools been affected, not only have the businesses been affected, but also churches have also been affected. Churches have been affected because they too, our religious institutions are now streaming from online, and they are meeting in parking lots with tailgate type worship services. And we've all had to adapt to a new way of life. Weddings don't occur the way that they used to. Funerals don't occur the way that they used to. But in this adaptation, we continue to still try to provide you all with the best way of life so that you can continue to live, work, and play as you know how. And as we speak of funerals, this pandemic is real. We have lost several people, not only across the nation, but several people right here in Galveston County to this pandemic. But just as many as we have lost, we've had many, many more survivors. We've had many, many more people who have contracted the virus in one way or another and have managed the various mechanisms of treatments and prescriptions to still navigate the challenges successfully on the surviving end. We have one of our very own, Mr. Joe Castillo, a member, a citizen of the city of Texas City, who is one of the most notable survivors because his story was told on the local Houston news channels. And we're going to show a little bit of that clip about Mr. Joe Castillo and what he went through in his endeavor to survive this pandemic. And after this, Mr. Branson will come back up and introduce our next speaker. Thank you so very much, and welcome to this town hall meeting.
Coming out of this pandemic, but there are also stories of perseverance and triumphs. People going to battle with COVID-19, staying in the hospital for months, and then walking out on their own. Our Rochelle Turner spoke with one of those survivors only on 2 tonight. Rochelle?
That's right, Dominique. Joe Castillo stayed at this hospital for more than 2 months battling the coronavirus. He had to go through therapy, and during the process, he lost over 100 pounds, but he beat COVID-19, and he finally got to go home.
Right now, I am so happy.
That's Rosie Castillo, and she's overwhelmed with joy.
I will never forget this day because as today, I get to have my husband back home with me.
These are pictures of her husband, Joe. He was on a ventilator for 2 weeks and lost 140 pounds in 2 months battling the coronavirus.
I thought I was gonna lose him.
On Friday, Joe was released from the hospital.
Unbelievable. By the grace of God, I'm still here. He's giving me a second chance, and I'm looking forward to seeing my family.
He walks down the hallway surrounded by workers cheering him on.
Your whole family's here.
A blessing for Joe and his family.
I beat COVID-19. I'm still alive. Thank God.
He says the journey was tough and thanks to staff who helped him along the way.
This lady right here was my first therapist.
When we first met Joe, he couldn't even sit up on the edge of the bed. He'd been in ICU on the ventilator. The doctors and nurses did an amazing job.
Joe says he beat COVID and he's going back home.
I'm a living testimony right now that it is real. Everybody needs to take it serious and be careful out there.
Now, Joe also had an important message to the Hispanic community. He says that if you're feeling sick, go get tested and take this coronavirus pandemic serious. As for Joe and Rosie, they say they're just going to relax tonight with their 2 dogs. They had plans to cook, but instead they got some Whataburger. We're live in Texas City tonight. I'm Rochelle Turner, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
Because the #1 with cheese helps
One of
everything.
Texas City's own right there. He's not here, but let's give him a round of applause. So what's important to take from what he just said is COVID-19 is real. And in just a few moments, our next speaker is going to provide you with some statistics and some other things that will help drive that point home. Our next guest speaker is the Emergency Manager and Homeland Security Director for the City of Texas City, with over 26 years of first responder and
Thank you, John, for that introduction. As you saw the video, and as John mentioned, in all my years of doing emergency management and also responding to disasters, this was a trying one because, as I've told people in the past, we didn't have a radar as to what was happening. This was something that I think all the distinguished panelists here will agree on, and the mayor as well, that this was something that we heard, but quite honestly, it was something that overtook us, and then fortunately we came together as a community, but we're still working hard. And with that said, when we first started, we started talking about the personal protective equipment program that we had. I have a great Deputy Emergency Manager, Dio Gonzalez. We were trying to figure out how to get that PPE. Some of the challenges we faced were that first we had to take care of the vulnerable population, just like everybody else was in the world. Second, we had to deal with price gouging situations. So we worked together as a team, worked together with the Galveston Health District to try to figure out how to do that. Some of the programs that we started off was not only helping the nursing homes in our city, which was giving out with the much needed personal protective equipment, we also working with industry corporations such as Ashland. We gave out over 1,000 gallons of hand sanitizer, which was really hard to come by. So how do we do that? Moving forward, we start and are going to continue to do the COVID test site. Want to make it accessible to the community to have that opportunity to still get tested, just like everything else. We want to make it accessible. Next slide, please, Darcy. With that, the vaccination sites. I cannot speak. In the beginning, I will tell you that it was a lot of work, a lot of unknowns. And like I mentioned before, we hadn't seen a pandemic like this since 1918. And with that said, just like the rest of the world, we were trying to get those vaccinations. And I can tell you that Dr. Kaiser and his staff worked extremely hard, and there was a lot of unknowns in the beginning, what to do, how do we do this, working from community partners with the National Guard, the beginning with the state, Texas Department of Emergency Management, working hard, and we're going to continue to do that. We're in constant contact, and we're very fortunate when I talk to other people from around the country, we're very fortunate to have the Galveston County Health District. On a 24/7, I could pick up that phone and they will work with us continuously, as the mayor mentioned, and I want to echo that loudly. In a 4-day notice, we were able to work with the county and get 840 people tested for the first time in our city. And along with that, I'm going to talk about the community partnerships, but first week, he was very adamant on making sure that we kept people healthy and safe. You saw that video. There was just one story, but I can assure you that there's a lot of stories going on. And that's one thing that it was very refreshing to continue that battle. With the previous mayor, we continued, and Mayor Johnson, that was one of his first priorities, to ensure that everybody in the city had the opportunity to get that COVID vaccination that is much needed. Next slide, please. So, working together with the churches, we've been working with community partners such as Galveston County Health District, industry, Texas, the Chamber, Texas City Lamarck Chamber, working with Paige. How do we work together on making sure that every single person is aware of what's happening, and how do we keep ahead of the curve, and how do we minimize that curve? So with that, we've worked with all these community partners that, looking at the model other cities have asked, how do you do that? And it goes past the COVID, the freeze we just had. I'm very blessed that in 24 years, I've had some great opportunities to work some great people and some great people in some great cities. But the partnerships that we have here, you know, talking to Dr. Duarte, being able to just make that one phone call and make things happen. That's what the community partnerships that we have and what makes the city what it is, a great city. Next slide, please. Or Facebook. I think, you know, my sons, they send my birthday cards via text message, so, and Father's Day and so forth. But we quickly recognize that there is a portion of the community that does not like social media, that does not like getting texts. So that was a challenge with the community partners that we had. We started establishing the community liaisons, or as FEMA likes to call them, community brokers. There is that old school mentality that we like to take, which is the grassroots approach, knocking on doors. You know, I see Jose Boys here in the crowd and his lovely wife, able to make one call to him goes to 10 people multiply that, and we're using the old system that we've used in the past before cell phones and social media, which worked really well. We have our news stations that we'd like to use as well. And moving forward, we're going to continue to do that. Sometimes we found out through other disasters that when this stops working, communication stops as well. We're not going to allow that to happen. We want to make sure that the community is aware of what we're doing. We monitor each other. I have to, and the city makes sure, and the mayor makes sure, that every single corner of the community has the opportunity to hear the message, to get the message, and then we go one step further. How do we help that community to come together? And what do we do? There's plenty of times there's a misconception that you know, we have a vulnerable population group of over 65. We have 10 nursing homes in the city of Texas City, and we have approximately 4 senior living centers, and there's more. But there's this misconception that they all live with someone. And reaching out to the community, we found out that that's not always the case. And we're very lucky that moving forward, we have a culture now in our leadership commissioners, the mayor, and everyone sitting here, that we take care of each other. And one of the things when I set forth and looking forward, and the mayor is establishing the new goals for the next 10 years, there's a key word that we recognize moving forward is the compassion and communication. Compassion goes a long way. So with that, utilizing the community partners and liaisons, don't be surprised when I start knocking at your door or calling your phone, if you like a phone call, to let you know that we have to work together, not just through this disaster, but through every disaster that the city faces. I would, but for the good times and the bad. Next, please. So with that said, looking at, I mentioned the relationship we have with Galveston. And that is one thing that we saw, that because of the strict guidelines that we're setting forth and the continued conversations with the CDC and with Dr. Kaiser's office, we established some protocol that allowed us to continue supporting ourselves and yourselves as well. And those are the things that we're going to continue doing. Next slide, please. Center. It's going to starting May 1st from 10 to 6 on weekends only. But no need to panic. Why? Because school's still going on. Starting June 5th, we're going to start opening up, or Dennis is and his team, starting June 5th, Tuesday. Carefully. This room has been measured time and time again to ensure how can we maintain that. We had Dio Gonzalez, George Fuller, the rest of the public works crew trying to measure how many can fit in here, along with the fire department, to ensure the safety of everyone. Next slide, please. And the ever famous more looking at CDC guidelines, looking at numbers, looking at the dashboard, that not only the state and the county's dashboard as well, to see what are those averages looking like. Has there been a peak? And we have the conferences and the teleconferences when we start seeing a trend going up. And then we have to, how do we gauge public safety and how do we adapt the city services to ensure that everyone's safe and healthy? And in closing, I just want to emphasize, as I mentioned before, that story that you saw at the beginning after the mayor introduced that. Those are far too common. Dr. Kaiser will attest to the fact that it is not fun when we were reading hospital numbers, hospital beds, fatalities. I was talking to Commissioner Jones, and you know, unfortunately, it brought a lot of deaths in the world, the state, the city. And it's not fun. Some of our very own family members, our very own co-workers, colleagues, experience that. And then killing the 800-pound elephant in the room, the deaths that come with it. Being retired from the Houston Fire Department, and 11 firefighters were buried because of COVID. My own that I worked with. And I just want to reemphasize that I applaud you for maintaining the healthy guidelines, the CDC guidelines, respecting that this is a
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. You heard a little bit about what the city has done and the path moving forward. I hope you heard there's some progress there. Some things are starting to open up. The library is getting ready to open up. Some of our recreation programs, our swimming pool is going to open up, all operating under CDC guidelines. We're going to change gears now, and we're going to talk about business, and we're going to talk about the effect of COVID on the economy here. And our next guest speaker, her background includes over 25 years of marketing, public relations, and nonprofit management. She earned a degree in communications from Western Carolina University and the Institute of Organization Management certification, commonly known as IOM, from the U.S. Chamber Institute. Before arriving here in Texas City for the Texas City Lamarck Chamber, she was president and CEO of the Brenham Washington County Chamber of Commerce, Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Economic Development Foundation for over 18 years there in that community. She is an active volunteer with the Gulf Coast Chamber Executives Association and the Rotary Club of Texas City. She and her husband have 2 sons, one soon-to-be daughter-in-law, and she has hosted an exchange student from Germany for many years. Please welcome Paige Michelle.
Thank you, John. Good evening. At this time last year, our lives were upended. The entire world was in crisis mode. We had just begun hearing the terms COVID-19 and novel coronavirus for the first time in February 2020. And by March 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. And last April, we had no playbook to help guide us, and businesses had no idea how long this unprecedented crisis would last. The pandemic had a profound impact on the job market in 2020 as many businesses laid off workers due to the shutdowns, and other companies shifted their employees to remote work and quarantines. The biggest job losses came in April 2020 when the nation's unemployment rate reached a staggering 14.7%, with over 20 million people suddenly out of work. Since that peak, the unemployment rate has declined, but not all occupations are recovering equally. Hard-hit industries include hospitality, travel, entertainment, oil and gas, the energy industry, very important here, big part of this community, construction, and self-employed workers. And now some industries have done amazingly well during the pandemic and have thrived, and those include online shopping, of course, delivery, grocery stores. These workers have been vital to us during this, on the front lines. And liquor stores, apparently, cleaning services, especially companies who also disinfect homes and businesses, healthcare, absolutely essential, and the true superheroes during this crisis. Now, the current workforce impact in 2021 is there is an employer crisis. Businesses are trying to reopen, but they can't find enough workers. People are still receiving the extra pandemic-related benefits, and many want to return to work, but they have childcare issues and health issues, and some have moved away, and some have family members that they are still trying to protect. This leads business owners to not being able to operate to their full potential. They have to limit their hours and their products or services, and they just cannot get fully staffed. And this means that for many businesses, they will not reach a new normal anytime soon. Their recovery is being slowed or stopped altogether. You and I will experience longer wait times at restaurants and shops and other service businesses until this changes. We need to recognize this and stay patient, everyone, with those who are putting themselves out there to serve us. And sadly, we will see more businesses close between now and the end of the year. We heard from several of our local industrial plant managers earlier this week here at the Doyle Center. Their first priority during this has been the safety and protection of employees. They talked about that has always been the top goal, even before the COVID pandemic, because of the inherent dangers of the workplace. So when the pandemic hit, it was never about, oh, how can we continue, how can we get this operating no matter what and deliver a product? No, it was always about how can we continue to keep our employees safe from something that we didn't even have all the facts about yet. Wait, stay on that slide, yeah. They needed lots of PPE supplies to keep employees protected. There was a drastic shortage of supplies. It was extremely difficult this time last year to find the available resources. There were massive impacts on operations, work schedules, and business continuity, and all while the market was plummeting due to plunging demand and excess supplies, crude oil prices at historic lows, and lower demand on transportation because people weren't going into their offices. I spoke to a couple of mid-sized employers in the community, and as one was describing the extent to which they changed their entire operations and procedures, he said they were stretched to their limits, but they kept going. Without a playbook to follow, mid-sized employers immediately pivoted. They figured out how to vary work schedules, work in smaller cohorts, let non-essential workers work from home, and other innovations. But sales volumes were lower and slower, which means profits were down. For small businesses, the most difficult thing was how to keep people working, especially for businesses that couldn't have people working remotely, like restaurants and hospitality and retail stores. So many small business owners suffered from a lot of stress and fear of the unknown. This is one area that the Chamber of Commerce could help with. We became the information clearinghouse for business members, and we sent out daily and weekly updates on what financial assistance was available, on healthcare updates, safety procedures, and much more. So we talked about the crisis mode. What about the path forward to the new normal? The timing of a transition out of this pandemic crisis mode to what we think could be a new normal depends on a lot of factors, and mainly science. Getting vaccines in arms, will there be more variants? And when will we have herd immunity? So in the short term, we will see a labor shortage, and that will continue to the fourth quarter. Service this summer will be slow, y'all. And small businesses will be paying dearly with their time and money. They will be working long and hard. They don't have the support staff. They're going to be trying to stay afloat. Stay patient, everyone, and tip your servers well. Unfortunately, many will continue to have significant setbacks related to employee issues and supply issues and reduced customer demand, and we'll see more closures. Supply chain disruptions will continue, especially for goods from overseas. And this is a huge problem for business, and it will continue indefinitely. There are spikes in commodity pricing. That will be part of our new normal, such as lumber, just as one example that has tripled, and who knows when or if prices will come back down. The cost burdens will get passed on to consumers. The businesses have no choice. They either pass it on or go under. So I want you to think about a business that you would miss if it closed for good, if it shut down. Then make a point to do business there. Buy gifts locally, shop local. Local small businesses have also innovated, and they have discovered ways that they also can have home delivery and contact-free service. So shop local to strengthen the community. The pandemic has shifted consumer attitudes and preferences, many which will affect business operations long-term in the coming months and years. There is now stronger than ever consumer preferences for wellness and health, comfort and safety. This will reign in a post-pandemic world. That can materialize in more spa and yoga programs or in-home workout products, private dining experiences, and other creative ways that businesses can build up comfort and emotional wellness for consumers. The pandemic has also accelerated innovation, especially in the ways of providing services contact-free, using digital online tools. And as the prevalence of mobile devices has changed how we discover and shop remotely, so will it also change how we interact when we are at a business, from how we check in, how we're seated, how we order services, how we're communicated with while on premises, and this will be part of the new normal and the path forward. The workplace itself will be redefined. To attract and keep employees, businesses will continue to offer flex hours and remote working options when they can, and other employee benefits. This will create hybrid work environments, and it will change the shape of offices for years to come. And all this will bring changes to our company cultures. You'll see an emphasis on employee health and well-being at more and more companies. So the path forward has a lot of challenges for businesses of all sizes, but it also looks intriguing, and we are starting to see a glimpse of it and a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Today, I was talking with a business that's considering to relocate here in Texas City. And one of the things they said, they have franchises throughout the Houston metropolitan area, and they said they cannot keep people employed. They don't, it's a restaurant type business, and they can't even stay open because of the shortage in personnel. So you heard that directly from Paige. That's an issue here moving forward with COVID-19. We talked about the city, we talked about businesses. Now let's talk about our schools. Our next guest speaker was hired as our Texas City Superintendent of Schools in July 2020. There we go. Let's give, even though I haven't introduced her, let's give her a round of applause. You'll meet her here in a second. During her first 8.5 months in the district, she has made great strides in providing tailored professional development for each school specific needs, increasing their mental health services, providing more collaborative opportunities for staff and parent support, and developing more opportunities for community engagement. All of that during a global pandemic, and all of that adhering to the CDC protocols. Her 29-year career includes everything from an elementary school teacher, a junior high school teacher, a high school teacher, a principal. She was in charge of elementary curriculum as the coordinator, an executive director of curriculum and instruction, an assistant superintendent, and we are fortunate to have, and please welcome Dr. Melissa Duarte.
Thank you, John. It's really hard to talk about the path forward without looking backwards. And our children, our staff, went off for spring break in 2020 and did not come back to face-to-face instruction until September. So schools had to immediately reimagine what it was going to look like to educate our children. First thing we had to do was figure out how to provide virtual instruction for over 8,000 students aged 4 to 18. And that in itself is a challenge. First thing we did was we had to open up our Link to Learning Virtual Academy. And we had to provide support for our students, our staff, and our parents on what instruction would look like receiving it at home. There were 2 forms of instruction that we provided. Synchronous instruction, where the teacher provided the lesson virtually through the computer, and students were able to respond and react. We also provided asynchronous instruction, and that included videos of our teachers, and it included assignments that our students did. Parents ultimately became partners in education for our students. We had to plan, we had to prepare for teacher interaction with our students, their availability to parents. We had to try and work around parent schedules, work schedules, to provide instruction for our students. The students were required to log in every day to be able to provide instruction, to be able to receive credit and attendance for our students. Teachers had to monitor that attendance to be able to provide that information to the state. Things looked very different during those few months of home instruction. We've tracked our enrollment virtually. When we were able to come back during that first grading period, we had 29% of our students continue virtually. That was 2,337 students we were instructing, while the remaining students were coming to school face-to-face. So now we started to have this hybrid blend of, am I a virtual teacher? Am I a face-to-face teacher? Am I doing a combination of both at this time? Second grading period, we recovered some more students, and we were at 26% virtual. By our third grading period, we had 1,680 students, or 20%, receiving virtual instruction. And during our fourth grading period, we have 1,606 students, or 20%, are still virtual instruction. Education also took a turn in regards to enrollment. Most districts across the state saw decreasing enrollment. We had less of our little ones coming to school. We saw less enrollment in pre-K, in kindergarten. And understandably so, there were some fears in regards to COVID and what was instruction going to look like, and what is the safety of our students and our staff going to look like. So our district over the school year lost about 4%, about 446 students from the previous school year to this school year. What this tells us is we're going to have students that are returning that may not have had the opportunity for pre-K instruction or kinder instruction. And so looking at what is early literacy going to look like for our students to ensure that they are on level and that they are not falling behind or we're closing those gaps that may have occurred during that time. The state has really looked at what is occurring and what gaps are we seeing. So the state has tested in January, well, between July and October, about 650,000 students. What we know is during summer, we experience the summer slide. Kids finish the year, they come back in the fall, and well, I don't really remember how that worked. And we close those gaps pretty quickly in the beginning of the year and keep our kids moving forward. What COVID has done is that's increased that gap to almost a 6-month time frame of being behind the instruction that they would typically have received. So right now, schools across the state are trying to figure out how do we close a 6-month gap for students? How do we catch those that did not return to school for this school year? And what adjustments do we have to make to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students and our staff? Data also shows for us that typically when a student falls behind up to a grade level, over a 2-year period, you will only recapture a certain percentage of students that are performing at grade level. So we currently work with students that have gaps. The only thing COVID has done is created larger gaps for students that districts have to address and make arrangements for. What the state will talk a lot about is what is instruction going to look like in the upcoming years? What are we going to do? What adjustments are we going to make to meet the needs of our students? We've got to look at what instructional materials do we provide for our students to accelerate learning. We have to be able to support our teachers so that they can close that gap. They can provide more than a year's instruction to get our students closer to being on level. And I always love it because we want to say we need more time, and there are only so many hours in a day that we can address the needs of our students. So we have to look at summer learning, we have to look at tutorials. What are those things that we can put in place to provide small group instruction to accelerate learning for our students? But we also have to empower our parents, and we have to make sure that our partnerships are strong so that what we're doing at home and at school is in coordination with each other. So we talk about what does traditional remediation look like? What did we typically do in a school system? And what does it need to look like moving forward? And that has to change for educational systems. And that is something that we're working on here at TCISD. How are we going to meet the needs of our children here in our community? So there are a lot of things that we did this year to meet the needs of our families, our students. We increased our mental health opportunities. We trained special ed staff on all of our campuses. We provided mental health first aid training for all of our counselors. We added social and emotional learning competencies and lessons for our staff and children. And we increased our mental health services, partnering with individuals and organizations like UTMB. But what we do know COVID did not take away is a lot of accomplishments for our students. We had a lot of firsts occurred this year. National winners, state champions, sweepstake winners across our campuses and programs. And that's a huge accomplishment in itself. What our parents, what our families, what our community did not do is allow COVID to stop what we needed to do for those successes. So I've provided what I'm going to call a laundry list, and I'm going to tell you this is an itty-bitty list compared to everything that we've done, and Tom told me I could not go over my limit, and he took out about 10 slides already, so I'm going to be really brief on this, but we had, for the first time, national winners in our Ready, Set, Teach and our speech debate competitions. We had qualified for state in journalism. Fine arts, CTE programs grew this year. We saw increases in participation. We had post-district qualifications for volleyball, football, swimming, basketball, powerlifting, track, all this year. 3 of our athletes have already received a scholarship for softball and volleyball, and I think we heard UT earlier. One of those is to the University of Texas in Austin. 2nd year in a row, we were identified as a Best Community for Music Education Award, and a 2nd year in a row for the Texas Art Association District of Distinction. We qualified in one-act play. We had all-state choir and band students. We had a state visual arts student. 6th year in a row, our mariachi qualified for state. We made sure every student across the district, over 8,000 devices were distributed so students could receive instruction at home. We have provided online support for teachers, and we did a technology parent support group. Our first rating on the financial side, we had a clean, unmodified opinion. We are in the process of completing 3 elementary schools to open for the new school year. We broke ground for a new middle school. We had our first school safety committee develop and organize in October of this year, and we have a draft completed of our multi-hazard emergency operations plan. We are setting up major accident emergency response exercises, and in November, we completed all of our school safety audits for schools and all of our facilities across the district. During this, we were also monitoring COVID. We were making adjustments as needed. We were following CDC guidance. We were following Texas Education Agency regulations. We were listening to the Galveston County Health District on what we should and should not be doing, and we're making decisions based on that. We set up a COVID-19 task force. I joined the district in July. At the end of July, we had this task force established to monitor, to make adjustments, to meet throughout the school year, to make sure that we were meeting the needs to provide safe instruction for students, to keep our staff safe during all of this time, but to also make sure that we make adjustments as things got better and data looked better. So they talked about recess, playground equipment, how are we going to pick up meals, where are the kids going to eat lunch, are we wearing masks, are we not wearing masks, when are we wearing masks, how far do desks have to be apart, can we now be at 3 feet instead of 6 feet? As you can see, I can continue to go on and on about that. We've also been monitoring our vaccination data because that helps guide some of the decisions that we need to make. We surveyed our staff, 57% of our staff responded, and 44% have been completely vaccinated. 14% need a second dose. So right now, out of the responses that we received, our district is at 58% vaccination. And we continue to provide that opportunity to ensure that they feel as safe as possible. Then the federal government talked about a COVID-19 recovery plan. And Texas City ISD was allocated just over $34 million. We waited for the state to accept those funds. We waited to see what that would look like. We communicated with our legislators to have a voice on this funding needs to come to districts. It needs to come to our schools. We have to have that opportunity to catch our kids up and ensure that our buildings are as safe as possible. So we put together a draft recovery plan. We sent it to all of our legislators that represent our area. We met with a committee. We talked about topics like accelerated learning, looking at summer jumpstart programs, virtual academies, adding interventionists to provide support for our students, Outdoor learning environments, what could that look like so that we have that fresh air? Then we talked about wraparound services, adding additional counselors during this time. We know that there was trauma. We know that there is grief. We know that families lost loved ones. And we have to be able to ensure our students that they are safe when they come to school and that we're going to get them home. We talked about infrastructure and technology. Do we look at HVAC purification systems? What is the technology that we need? We needed to upgrade the laptops for our teachers so that they could do this robust virtual instruction for our students. And then we talked about academic support. How do we reduce retention? How do we target our students? So what do we do moving forward? What do we do right now to meet the needs of the students? So from April 19th through May 21st, we are providing acceleration for our students. We are recovering grades. We're looking at failure rates. We're providing opportunities for students to recover and recoup some of those credits, those grades that they lost, where they may have fallen behind when they were at home and now they've returned to the campuses. But we've also talked about what does summer look like for us. And we are going to be offering an EOC STAR boot camp for our students. High school students still have to pass their end of course exams to get their high school diploma. So we need to ensure that they are prepared for those assessments. Our high school students need a certain number of credits to graduate. And so those that may have fallen behind during the past, feels like a year and a half, but feels like an eternity right now. So we're going to provide some of those initial credits, get our students caught up. And that will be through our credit recovery program, which is going to run June 14th through July 1st. And then we're going to offer what we call our Level Up Academy. And that is where we are going to really target on some of those foundational, fundamental skills that our students need to be successful in the next grade level. And we will set those up by campus. Students can go to their home campus, work with the teacher that they're going to have in that next grade level so that they start to close the gap. They get to know where those students are and they can accelerate and move our students forward. We'll also be offering an Excel Academy, and this is designed for our English learners, and this is a required program for the state, and this provides additional instruction, language support for our bilingual students in the district. Then we get to fall, and that's usually the big question. What are we going to do in August of 2021? Well, our board will get some recommendations from our committees. We'll be looking at the CDC and TEA guidance as those pieces of information are released. Specifically, we'll have conversations about masking and social distancing. We'll talk about virtual learning. Is that something that we will continue in the fall, knowing that not all students may be eligible for vaccines prior to the start of instruction? We're going to really look at that social and emotional support. Think of your little ones, your pre-K, kinder. Socialization is such a big part of their development. And when you sit on a little square on a computer, you miss some of those opportunities. The last thing I'd like to share with this group is the district is not going to get all of this right. There is no playbook that we received that told us this is how you handle a global pandemic. But what I can tell you is the district has done everything it can to maintain academic proficiency for students, safe and secure learning environments for our children, and we've adapted to the needs of our community. We've talked to our staff about giving grace, being patient, and maintaining a positive outlook as we've navigated through this. We are excited to get through this year. I'm shocked it's going to be May. We'll have children graduating June 4th and 5th. But that next school year, as normal as we can get it, that's what we're looking forward to. Thank you for giving me this time to visit with you.
Thank you, Dr. Duarte. 8.5 months on the job, and what an amazing job. We're glad that you are there in that leadership role, and thank you for what you're doing. Our next speaker serves as the Galveston County Local Health Authority and was appointed as the top official of the health district earlier this month. He is an infectious disease expert and has led the health district's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. He is a professor of medicine at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, where his duties include clinical care, education, and research. Prior to joining UTMB, he is a professor of medicine at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. His experience also includes roles with the Baltimore City Cancer Research Program, VA North Texas Healthcare System, and Parkland Hospital in Dallas. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from Morgan State University in Baltimore and obtained a Doctor of Medicine from the University of Maryland. Please welcome Dr. Philip Kaiser.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this. You know, thinking about when the pandemic and how everything started, for me, the pandemic started more than a year ago. It actually started on January 20th, 2020. Why do I know January 20th? Because it was Martin Luther King's birthday. And my wife and I took the weekend off, and we had gone to a little resort in East Texas. And my habit when I wake up in the morning is to either get my iPad or computer out and start reading the news and start looking at things. And I came across this article talking about this virus we were hearing about from China. This article is a little different because they actually had the curves, and it was going like this. And suddenly it was taken off, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be really bad. And then my wife and I had one of those moments that only couples that have been married a long time have, and I'm like, look at this. Look at this. And she goes, you woke me up for that. I go, but this is terrible. Look at this. This could be really bad. What do you want for breakfast? Don't you know this is the end of the world? Yeah, but I want to die with a full stomach, okay? So let's go get breakfast. So, you know, getting back the next day, we came back, and that day, the next day that we were there, the news was released that we had the first case in the United States. And so we started planning then. And we didn't know what we were planning for. We had no test. We really didn't know what the symptoms of the virus looked like. We knew what the Chinese were telling us. We weren't sure we believed them or not. And all we knew it was in the United States. And so we started planning, thinking about how we isolate people, how bad could it be. We really had no idea. But then as things progressed along, we started seeing it moving through the population, and then there was a test available. Actually, it was a test available through the CDC. You couldn't get it done here. You had to, basically, if a doctor wanted a test, they had to call me up and say, do we have permission to get that test? And I would say, yes, you have permission to get that test. And then we would call up the state of Texas, the state health department, and say, we'd like to test this person. Do we have permission to send this to you? And they'd say, yes, you can send it to us, but we have to check with CDC first. And then CDC would review it, and they'd say, okay, you can send it to us. And now, of course, now we're like 4 or 5 days into this, you know, and so we didn't have a good way of getting a test done. And then the federal government allowed us to start doing our own tests, and so the scientists at UTMB started developing their own test, and initially we could do 8 tests a day. I was so happy. 8 tests a day! And then it was 16, and then it was 32, and then we got to the point where we were doing thousands of tests a day. We set up a big drive-through center, which you may have seen, or, you know, we were lining people up in Texas City, and maybe some of you went through there, you know, you got in a bay and roll your window down, someone, okay, here it comes, right? And how many of you had a COVID test? Really? Some of you don't know what you're missing. How many of you have had a COVID test on another one? Yeah, exactly. You know, it can be quite uncomfortable to get one done. I've had, I think, 5 of them now. And so we started doing that, but we still didn't have enough testing capability. And then we were able to work with Judge Henry's office and develop a relationship with UTMB, and we were able to actually start sending it out to the clinics. So we didn't need the drive-thrus anymore. And you could just call up and say, I need a test. And that was done without regard for people's ability to pay. So if you had the money, you had insurance, they would bill your insurance company. You wouldn't get charged. If you didn't have the money, wouldn't bill the insurance company. Didn't matter. And so to date, we've done probably we're 360,000 tests of people. You know, we only have about 340,000 people in the county. So a couple of us have gotten more than one. But what we saw happening was that there was a lot of COVID out there. And we had a lockdown, and, you know, people stayed home, and we watched Tiger Kings, and said, where did all the toilet paper go? I have a confession to make to you. My father-in-law took it all. I'm serious. He's this little 87-year-old man. He stands about this tall, and every morning he'd get up and he'd go to Walmart, and he'd go, excuse me, do you have any toilet paper? And they'd take pity on him, and they'd give him some, and then he'd go back and do it the next day. And we went over his house, and there's like this huge pile of toilet paper. You know, we ran out of toilet paper. We ran out of other supplies. We watched what was going on. We watched what was going on in New York City. We watched what was going on in New Orleans, and we were scared. We were scared because we knew that if we weren't ready for this, we could get overrun, just like those places got overrun, just like India's being overrun right now. We had meetings every day with the health department, with UTMB, and at one point, we were told that if we get to over 100% of capacity in UTMB hospitals, we have enough PPE for 11 days. And there's no more coming. It's like sending soldiers into battle saying, here's your ammo, that's it. When you're done, that's it. So fortunately, as you've heard, people were able to find us PPE by hook or by crook, but people were stealing PPE. There were trucks that were hijacked. There was warehouses that were broken into. So it got to the point that the police were accompanying the PPE shipments down to make sure that we could get it all. Then we started seeing it starting to spread to the community. And guess who were some of the first people that were hit? First responders, right? Police, fire. There's one point, I think, every police and fire chief in the county had me on their speed dial. Dr. Kaiser, I got 2 officers that have been exposed. What do we do? I've got this. What do we do about that? What do we do about that? And we try to work through all of those problems. And then came July, right? We saw the numbers go up, 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 up. And then on July 4th weekend is really when it reached its peak. And, you know, and then the cities closed the beaches. Don't blame me. I did not close the beaches in Galveston, just for the record. That was a locally made decision. But people then got it. They saw the numbers. They saw the extreme things. They said, this thing's for real. And we saw our numbers go down, right? And so then in September, October, really low, lower than they are today. And things were going pretty well. But then we started having COVID fatigue, right? People are just getting tired of wearing the mask. I'm tired of wearing a mask, you know. But we'd started moving forward. We started seeing the numbers go up slowly, 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 slowly. But the good news, we were hearing about the vaccine. So in October, we formed a task force to say, how are we going to get vaccine out? And we were lucky. We were lucky for a couple reasons. One is that Texas was chosen as a test state to try and rapidly get vaccine out. And then UTMB had really, really cold freezers. So the Pfizer vaccine, which was the first vaccine that became available, you have to keep in a minus 80-degree freezer. Now, just to let you know how cold that is, if you were to take a rubber glove and put some water in and freeze it, you could take it out and throw it and it would shatter, okay? And it has to be kept in very, very cold conditions. Because of all the research they do there, they have those freezers. So we were able to get that vaccine. So we were able to start vaccinating our staff starting December 14th. And of course, that was, you know, just huge. And unlike pictures that you've seen on TV, where, you know, you see like, you know, the vice president getting his shot. I don't know how many of you saw Pence getting his shot. I just had to kind of chuckle at it because it was so somber. It was such a serious occasion. I mean, if you ask anybody that's at the UTMB thing where we started, it was a party. Everybody was so happy, except we weren't drinking. You know, we were just all getting vaccinated. And and we were being able to move forward. We actually had a fight over who was going to be the first one to be vaccinated. You know, our PR people had picked this one doctor, and she had worked really hard in the ICU and taken care of a lot of people, and she was going to be the first one. But there was another guy who worked as a nurse who kept trying to slip in front of her in line, and she slept in front of her, and as he slipped in, and then all this press was going. And then our guy who's in charge of the press was going, no, don't take his picture. He's not the right one. Everybody was really anxious to get in. And so we started vaccinating folks. And we worked through our staff very, very quickly so that by January 1st, we realized that, oh my God, we've done a significant number of people, and we have more vaccine than we can use just on our own folks. So we started bringing people in from the outside. Of course, we had no idea what it was doing. It was a big mess. You know, people were calling up their aunts and uncles and their brothers and sisters, and then people go, no, you're too young, you gotta wait. Okay, fine, you can come. And we started working through all of those issues, okay? Then more vaccine became available, and then we opened up the drive-thru at Walter Hall Park. And the goal of doing that was to vaccinate as many people in a short amount of time as we possibly could. And I can tell you today, that's mission accomplished. We did what we needed to do. We vaccinated over half the county, primarily there. To date, we have given almost 290,000 vaccines. It seems inconceivable to me, but if you've, did anybody get vaccinated up there? Yeah, okay. Most days, not every day, and if you caught us on a bad day, I apologize. But most days, it was remarkable. People would come in their cars, they'd drive around, they'd check who they are, make sure that they're on the list, go around, get their vaccine, drive to the area where they would wait, and then, boom. Most people would be in and out in about 20 minutes. We went from doing 800 vaccines a day to doing almost 5,000 vaccines a day through there. And what we do is we just refine the process. It wasn't something that the health department did. The health department participated. It wasn't something UTMB did. UTMB participated. Office of Emergency Management participated. All of the cities sent us volunteers and support. It was truly a countywide community effort. And we did it ourselves without any FEMA money. We did it ourselves without any directives from the federal government or from Austin. We did it ourselves by working together and everybody pulling together and collaborating. And I think in part maybe our hurricane experience is what helps us do that. You know, the emergency managers all know each other. We regularly have to respond to things, and we were able to put things together. And the other thing that was so amazing about the whole process was that when we had arguments and disagreements about what to do, it wasn't about people's ego. It was about what's the best way to do this. And so sometimes we would actually, people get really mad, and they go, no, that's wrong, we need to do it this way, we need to do it that way. But we would keep working and getting things done. So we're doing our last set of shots at Walter Hall Park on Saturday. And the reason being is because the demand for the vaccine has dropped off dramatically. We knew from doing surveys that once we hit that 50% mark, we would get to those folks who were unsure, who were hesitant. We knew that about 25% of the population had some concerns. We also know another 25% says, hell no, I ain't getting vaccinated. That's okay, because we think once we get to about 75%, we'll be at that number where we'll see the numbers just totally go away. So Saturday, we're going to give our last set of second doses. We've invited everybody who's volunteered to come. We're going to have a party, and we're going to tell everybody, great job. And then we're going to start, we're actually starting the next phase. It's not over. We're still seeing cases. We actually have seen a little bit of a bump about 2 weeks ago. And we're going to see how it plays out. We saw a huge drop, but we still have cases, so we need to get more people vaccinated. So how do we do that? Well, basically, it's old-fashioned public health, which is not social media, not TV. It's going into communities, meeting people where they are, addressing people's concerns. The way the vaccines were developed, because they were so fast, there's a lot of distrust, all right? And particularly given our last election, which was so contentious, that just kind of bred that feeling of distrust. And I got to tell you, it's not what you hear on the news. It's not just people who wanted to vote for President Trump. It's not just African Americans. It's not just Hispanics who don't speak English. It's not. Every person who doesn't want a vaccine has their own story and their own reason. And so what we've got to do is we've got to get out there and start working with people where they are. We've already started working with churches, and you know, we've done, I think, both of your churches, right? And our first one is actually, we went to when we went to Greater St. Matthew's Church, you know, we wanted to do something with the African American community. And we go out there and we realize we screwed up in how we put the message out, because there's only white people showing up. And I'm going, this ain't right. So we did it again. And we got better. And so our rates in the African American community of vaccination are the same as what we see among Caucasians and among Latinos. So, you know, so we're addressing some of those disparities that we're being seen. We're going to continue to work with church groups. We've had discussions about working in schools, and we're actually going to be using Texas City ISD as a pilot project to start vaccinating school kids. So right now, we've got to wait till kids are, only 16 and older can be vaccinated, and only with the Pfizer vaccine. But we're going to be working and trying to figure out how to do it. One of the things we've learned with this whole thing is that we really don't know what we're doing, okay? And so we have to try things out, and then once we try things out, we learn from it, and then we refine it and get better and better. So we're going to try that in Texas City. We're going to see how it works out, and then that works, we're going to start working with the other school districts and get the vaccine out there. We expect that the federal government will approve the vaccine for kids at least 12 and older very soon, and maybe as going down to about 7 and older. Once that happens, we're hoping that there'll be another surge in demand for people wanting to get vaccine. And what we'd like to do is, as we start doing school children, is not just say, school children, come on, bring the whole family, all right? Bring grandma, bring grandpa, bring your aunts and uncles, bring everybody. And we're going to try that out. We're going to figure out how to do that. We've worked with hospitality workers and the Galveston Convention Center, did something at Moody Gardens, looking for other opportunities to work with hospitality workers to get them vaccinated so they can feel safe. We're talking to the Port of Galveston right now. You know, the CDC has basically said that they expect that their cruises could open up as early as July, but got to get a lot of people vaccinated. So we're having talks now on how we go about that. I think the next 25% is actually going to be a lot harder than the first 50%. Because the first 50% were people that wanted it. You know, I wanted it, and I think a lot of other people wanted it too. Now we've got to work with smaller groups. We're going to get less return on investment, and it's just going to take more time. That being said, what's the future look like? It's hard to say. If things keep going the way they are, we'll probably see our numbers continue to decline, and by the time we get to school starting again, we won't see any COVID anymore. That's a very optimistic point of view. I got to be real honest with you. I think what's more likely to happen is that we're going to get it down to a level where we see COVID and we see outbreaks here, there. We may need boosters. Don't know yet. Most of us have only been vaccinated for less than 6 months. So, you know, I got my vaccine on December 15th. So I'm about, you know, I'm coming up to my 6-month mark pretty soon. And so we have to wait until we see enough people at that point to know how long the immunity lasts and whether we need to get more vaccine in people's arms. There's variants out there. There's this virus that, you know, it keeps changing. It changes its genetics a little bit. And right now in our county, about 75% of the virus is actually what they call the UK variant. It's actually a virus that came out of the United Kingdom from Great Britain, came over here, spread all over the place. This thing can happen locally, too. There's now a variant that just got discovered in Bryan, Texas. We call it the Aggie variant, right? really tough, but kind of dumb. Anyway, I'm sorry if I've offended any Aggies in the group. But, you know, so we have the potential to have our own variants there. The good news about that is with the RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, because of the way it's made, they can make the changes very, very quickly. And so they're looking and they're following these variants, and they're already trying to design these cocktails. So it won't be one vaccine. You'll get your booster, and it'll have something in there that'll help you for the current virus, but for something else as well, some of these newer viruses that are coming out. So as we move forward, I think I'm optimistic, and I've been pretty pessimistic through this whole thing, you know, like I started off with. But I'm optimistic, but it's important we realize it's not over. We still have a lot of work to do. If we look at the 1918 flu epidemic, that took 2 years, and we're just finishing our first year. So we may have some more setbacks as we move forward. It's important that we still do all the things we need to do, including do this, you know. I get it. We were talking about earlier why we don't wear masks for me. It pulls on my ears. And then when I wear my glasses or headphones or something like that, it really hurts. And I can't stand this thing. And I'm sure every one of you have the same kind of experiences. But we are making progress, and we are getting to where we need to be. And we need to continue to do what we've done, which is basically work together as a community and care for each other. And as we do that, I think we're going to get through this. It's going to take some time. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll get through this. So that's all I have to say. And again, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Kaiser, thank you so much for that information. Really appreciate your expertise in leading us here in Galveston County. We're going to take about 5 to 7 minutes, and we are going to give you an opportunity to ask our distinguished panel a question or two. Like I said, a maximum maybe 5 to 7 minutes. So if you have a question, what we'd ask you to do is make your way to that microphone back there, directly in front of me, kind of to each of your sides. Walk up, state your name, and go ahead and ask your question, and our distinguished panel will answer your question. If somebody's up speaking and you want to ask the next question, if you'll go ahead and get in line about 6 feet behind that individual, that way we can proceed with as many questions as possible over the next 5 to 7 minutes. So, do we have anybody that has a question that they would like to ask our panel? Yeah, let's give them a round of applause for an excellent job, excellent information. It looks like TJ is going to approach the mic, and I know he's got a great question for us.
I may have too many, but Dr. Duarte, I know you said the board is still going to be taking its advice what to do for the fall session. At this point, though, and Dr. Kaiser, if you could speak to this as well, because that's going to be the biggest question folks have, because other school districts have already announced their decisions. What is the decision going to be when it comes to concerning, and what would you recommend, I should say, Dr. Kaiser, of returning in the fall, mask, no mask, and continuing an option like some districts have of having a remote learning option if parents want to opt in on that?
Oh, okay. So, all right.
Yeah, it's coming to you as well, Dr. Duarte.
Okay.
I'll give Philip the chance to tell you what he's going to recommend.
So CDC has come out with some guidelines, and basically they've done some interesting things with schools, which I think can really inform us regarding social distancing as well. Because remember, when you're in a school, you got a bunch of people in a room for 5, 6, sometimes 7, 8 hours. So potential for high exposure. But basically they say 3 feet distance with masks is okay. There's no recommendations regarding vaccinated kids at this point, so we don't know what that is going to look like. I can tell you what we've seen is, and I'm probably going to have everybody hate me for what I'm about to say, but basically, the real problem is schools isn't the schools, it's the sporting events, and that's where we've seen outbreaks. And you know, my son was an athlete in high school, he was a wrestler, and are you guys wrestling or no? I don't think you're having wrestling because it's too close. Yeah, I'd love to see wrestling come back, but you know, that's probably going to be one of the last things that come back. But you know, even Dr. Fauci is saying that, you know, we should open schools and stop worrying about it, because in general, kids don't have the severe problems. What happens and what the concern is that most people get infected at home, okay? So protecting schools protects people at home, and it also protects the staff. So our own data here in Galveston County is that staff at schools are about 2.5 times more likely than the general population to get infected with the virus. And with that, there have been people that have gotten very ill, and there have been some people that have died. So, and overall, the kids are generally going to be okay. There will be some that could get really sick. There will be some that may have some long-term side effects, but for the most part, they'll be okay. And what we would recommend is you know, following CDC guidelines, we have regular conversations with school districts. They also get guidance from TEA, and sometimes, you know, TEA's interpretation, our interpretation don't necessarily match up, and we talk about it, and at the end of the day, you know, it's their call in how they want to do it. But I'm pretty optimistic about schools opening up in the fall. So.
And as always, I have to have a follow-up real fast, though.
Okay.
Let me ask, that pilot program you announced, I think that's the first we've heard about that, the pilot program with Texas City ISD for the vaccinations of students. How is that going to look for those that may have heard that for the first time tonight?
Yeah, so right now we only have approval for 16 to 18-year-olds, okay? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to see if we can figure out a way to work with the schools, have the schools identify students who would be interested and or families to be interested in doing it. And then we're going to actually go to a place that we'll figure out. You know, just thinking it through, you know, school districts have big auditoriums, they have big you know, gymnasiums, which could be a good spot to do it. We've actually worked with Texas City ISD on some mass exposure drills in the past that have gone very, very well. So I'm pretty optimistic we'll be able to figure this out. And so then once we do that, we'd like to get, you know, at least about 150, 250 kids or people vaccinated, then regroup and figure out what we did right and what we need to improve.
Check. Hey, Kevin Yackley, I'm Commissioner at Large for the City of Texas City. Thank you very much. TJ and Dr. Kaiser, thank you for during the pandemic. I was one of your common viewers. And each day that you went on there, I'd watch a number for Texas City going up and down. And it gave us, knowing that people are watching the numbers, and you were very visible to us. Once again, you say we have to work harder because a lot of senior citizens do not have that information. They do not follow it. So we're going to have to, I think, knocking on the doors and working through even the grocery stores and doing something that's a monetary to get them to get their shots. And I have am working on my own ways of going out and knocking on doors and talking to seniors. Thank you so much for what you did, and it's not over, and we understand that. Ms. Duarte, thank you so much for what you've done for the school district. We are overly impressed. I have relatives that are moving into town so they can go to school at our school district. So I'm very proud of what you did. All I can say is from everybody working together, including the mayor, and wearing the mask and going through our town, we're lucky, and our business base is hurting. I all the time are talking to our small businesses that are suffering, and I don't think the labor shortage is so bad in our community, but it's growing, and anything that you can do, Ms. Page, I certainly appreciate it. I believe that we should be looking for a way of bringing all businesses in and even doing a way of paying their way to join the chamber, if possible, so that way they can be a part of it. But thank you so much. Emergency management, you're always on it. You're always busy during the storm. We certainly appreciate it. And the mayor, for what you've done since the beginning, And I think that you are strict on it, on the protocol. I have my nose available because I actually have a lung infection, and these masks make it difficult to breathe, which, being a big individual, we take a lot of air in. So I certainly appreciate it. You all done a good job. Thank you very much. My time is up, and we look forward to having Texas City get back to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yackley. Dr. Duarte, did you want to add anything to the response to Mr. Olds?
So what I can tell you is we've got our COVID task force meeting May 5th, I believe, and we will be coming up with our recommendations. So we are talking about masks in the fall. We will be reviewing all of the CDC guidance, the TEA guidance, and then bringing a recommendation to our board. At this time, I couldn't tell you what my recommendation is, but we will be working on that so we can communicate to our parents.
Thank you, Dr. Duarte. Some of our panelists are going to be able to stick around a little bit, but our mayor, the Honorable Dedrick Johnson Sr. is going to provide us with some closing comments and provide you with some additional information. Please welcome Mayor Johnson.
First of all, I want to thank so much the panelists, the guests who came out today. We couldn't have done this town hall meeting without you, Dr. Philip Kaiser, Dr. Melissa Duarte, Ms. Paige Michelle, Texas Lamar Chamber of Commerce. We're so grateful to have you in our community. You could have, pitched your tent anywhere. We're just thankful that you chose Texas City. And we could not be as informed and make the decisions that we need to make without Dr. Kaiser and Galveston County Health District, who uses research and they use data to drive our decisions. And so we're very thankful for that. I saw some commissioners come in. Commissioner Yackley, you just saw him. I saw Commissioner Jamie Clark. Thank you so very much for coming today. I wanted to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge my pastor as we were talking about getting into the churches. My pastor, Dr. William Randall, is here today of Greater St. Matthew's Baptist Church. And there's so many other churches who are concerned about their populations as well and their congregations. And we want to let you know that you are not forgotten. We do want to thank our community partners, our local churches, our industry, the chamber, the businesses. I just want to really underscore what Ms. Paige Michelle said when she said support our local businesses, buy local, use the goods and services that are produced here locally. Tip big when you go out to eat at restaurants. That's one thing that kind of has survived is the restaurants, because we still, in the midst of a pandemic, we still have to eat. So let's make sure we continue to do that. The student success that was underscored by Dr. Duarte is remarkable, both in music and arts and athletics and academically, and we want to continue to encourage those students to do their best. But in addition to student encouragement, let's continue to encourage our teachers, our staff. We talked about the emotional well-being and support of our students, and the staff is the ones who are many times in need of that emotional well-being and support because they have had to adapt on the fly, as she said, without a playbook in this pandemic. And so we're thankful for those teachers who continue to work day in, day out, as well as those administrators. We want to continue, well, first of all, I want to thank I-45 Now, also I-45 Now and TJ Alls for using this opportunity to allow us to broadcast on your webpage, on your social media page. I-45 Now has been a great community partner. This is on our Channel 16, local cable access channel, on our social media. And when I talk about local cable access, I want to talk about and really just give a kudos to our Director of Marketing and Media and Communication, Ms. Darcy Valenzuela. She's sitting in the back over there, but I just want to give her a shout out because she works so hard along with Derek Miller behind the scenes and making sure that the dissemination of information from the city of Texas City to our communities, to our citizens, is done in the most professional and efficient manner. And we could not have done that without them. I want to thank this gentleman to my right, to your left, Mr. Tom Munoz. He's our Director of Emergency Operations, and he brings a wealth of experience, as you all have been told, but he has really been my go-to guy as far as getting information and trying to figure out in which direction we're going to go to next. Not just industrial disasters, not just hurricanes and weather disasters, but here in this pandemic, he has been very instrumental. And not only does he just direct, but he's put boots on the ground and has been one of those volunteers that Dr. Kaiser mentioned when it came to Walter Hall Park. And it was made a success because of the volunteers like Mr. Munoz. And so we're very thankful for that. Earlier today, earlier in this particular town hall meeting, I talked about a gentleman by the name of Mr. Joe Castillo, and you all looked up on the screen and you saw Joe's story as it was portrayed by our Houston News Channel. But right now, Mr. Joe Castillo has made it here with us, and I want to give him an opportunity to just stand and be recognized. You can make your way up to the front if you'd like to, because you saw his story, and he told you what he went through in a local hospital. He went several weeks without seeing his beautiful wife and his family, and he is a COVID survivor. So I'm gonna give him at least 2 minutes, Mr. Castillo, to come on up here and just say what's on your heart, and I'll come up and finish up after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name is Joe Castillo Jr., and I am a coronavirus COVID-19 survivor. I was part of the peak that the doctor talked about in June and July. I was in the hospital. It was 2 months of my life that I lost it. I did not know where I was at. First of all, I have to give all glory to God for letting him survive. I want to thank all the doctors and staff over at the Mainland Medical Center. They did an outstanding job bringing me back. But most of all, I have to really thank my beautiful wife who stood by me the whole time. She helped me nurse me back to good health. As you can see, I still have issues breathing. The COVID really damaged my lungs. I've never smoked a day in my life, and I've been told by the doctors that when they look at the x-rays, it looks like I've been smoking for 50 years. I still have issues sometimes breathing, but thank God I'm alive. I was part of that peak, June and July. It started at the last month of May. I came home from the plant that I work at. I'm not going to disclose any names right now, but they shut the plant down for 2 weeks. 123 men came down with coronavirus, and I was one of them. The next 3 days after that, my wife said I had no functions. All I did was sleep for 3 days. Didn't want to eat. Had no intentions of waking up. When I finally woke up, she got me to the car. I could barely walk to the car. Took me to Clear Lake Medical. I was there 3 hours, and the next thing I know, I'm in the ambulance, and they brought me back home to Texas City Mainland Hospital. I was informed that Texas City Mainland Hospital became one of the top leading hospitals, and they had all kind of special doctors that specialize in COVID-19. So I was one of the ones that they saved. While in the hospital, I tried to escape 3 times. Didn't get enough oxygen to my brain. I didn't know what I was doing. 3 times they restrained me, tied me down to the bed. I have no idea how I did it, but all 3 times I escaped. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. In that process, I tore my right rotator cuff and my right bicep, so that had to be surgically repaired. So I've been through a pretty much ordeal, but I've been able to, by the grace of God, to survive. After the ordeal, being tied down for the 3rd time, the hospital called my wife the following day to inform her that I had just been put on a ventilator. I went into a coma. I was in a coma on a ventilator for almost a month. When I finally woke up, I had no idea where I was at. The first thing I asked, where am I at? How long have I been here? And where is my wife? For 2 months that I was in the hospital, I had to endure this sickness by myself. They don't let nobody visit you in the hospital, so I had to endure all that by myself. But by the grace of God, and I'm a strong believer of the good Lord, and I'm going to tell you, this is the kicker. While I was in the hospital, I flatlined 3 times. And by the grace of God, I'm still here. I couldn't have done it without the doctors and the medical staff and the physical therapy people that brought me back. I lost all functions of my body. It took 3 days before they could understand me trying to speak again. I could not use any of the functions of my muscles were all gone. I couldn't even walk. I had to learn how to use all my functions and my muscles back with physical therapy and had to learn how to walk again. So I understand y'all seen the video of me coming out. That was a surprise that I didn't know was gonna happen. But the last 3 days that I was in the hospital, they really pushed me to learn how to walk by myself without the walker, just a short distance. I had no idea that the news media was gonna be there, but that's what their goal was, to show people that I survived and I was able to walk out of there on my own free will. So the trauma didn't finish there. When I got home, I had to have physical therapy come visit me and work me every day. But the biggest part of my life was my beautiful wife again, who helped me every step of the way. I can't thank her enough. So that is part of my story. I haven't worked in over a year. I'll be looking forward to when we'll be able to get back to work. But right now, I'm still at home and living day by day. Again, COVID attacked my respiratory system, so at times I have problems speaking, running out of breath. But I'm still here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joe Castillo, for taking time out of your busy schedule to, I mean, you could be at home resting, but you wanted to come and share your story. Ladies and gentlemen, when we were planning this event, I reached out to Mr. Castillo because I had the opportunity and the pleasure to work with his beautiful wife in the past, and so I know her personally, and I know how much of a nurturer she is, and she's been that way for our students in Texas City School District when she worked with us as well. So I wanted to thank him. When I asked him, he instantly said, absolutely, I'll be there, without hesitation. And so we thank him for sharing his personal story with us. Just a couple of more quick announcements. I wanted us to know that we talked about the churches who are giving the vaccine around here. Barber's Chapel Church in Texas City will be giving the vaccine on May 10th. May 10th from 9 a.m. to 1. If you know of anybody else who needs that vaccine, they can show up at Barber's Chapel. Once again, stay tuned to our website at texascitytx.gov, and we'll continue to update that with vaccination opportunities. On the screen right here, I think you see one of the most iconic symbols of Texas City, and that's the Texas City Phoenix. We have that statue right outside of the Doyle Center. Ladies and gentlemen, the phoenix is a mythological creature that many people know has been symbolic of rising from the ashes. Rising from the ashes and being rebirthed after disaster. That's something that Texas City prides itself in doing. From the 1947 disaster, when many people thought the city was wiped from the face of the map, Texas City joined together with collaborative efforts, and we rose from the ashes. Whether it be industrial explosions of the past, we have collaborated and worked together, and we have risen from the ashes. And now we find ourselves here in 2021 in this global pandemic. And I just want to assure you that if we continue to do the things that we've always done as a city, neighbor helping neighbor, businesses helping businesses, we will continue to rise from the ashes. I want to thank everybody, Mr. Tom Munoz, our esteemed panelists, and I also want to acknowledge we have representation here with us from Congressman Randy Weber's office. I want to thank you so very much for coming, because it is that level of support that we continue to need. It's okay for us to support one another locally and county-wide, but when we get state representation and national representation to look at little old Texas City, this Gulf Coast city down here in the state of Texas, the place so nice, they named it Texas twice. In Texas City, Texas, we're very grateful and appreciative. Thank you all for coming. Thank you on I-45 Now, those of you who are viewing out there in our social media and our local channels, and we'll see you at the next one. God bless you all.